But, Sean, we're going to move on into the next team, and that is the Buffalo Bills, because what? No one circles the wagons like?
What?
The Buffalo Bills. That's what I was looking for,
I
Sean.
thought nobody misses field goals like the Buffalo Bills.
Yes, no one misses wide right quite like the Buffalo Bills. But the thing I want to start with Buffalo is they got a new sheriff in town, a new guy running the ship after Rex Ryan was fired. Sean McDermott, the new head coach
Buffalo
of the Buffalo
is a new sheriff?
Yeah, new sheriff.
What happened to Johnson?
What happened to Johnson? He's gone.
He's gone. Sean McDermott, I mean, obviously he's a capable guy. I mean, you look at what he did defensively, Carolina. I mean, not only bringing in the right players, but also with the 3-4 scheme that they had over there. And I think it was very, I mean, obviously it helps having a guy like Luke Kuechly out there. Mm-hmm. So, and, Thomas Davis and all the great players that he had. But, I mean, you look at what he was able to do from 2011 to 2016 as the Carolina Panthers defensive coordinator, building really a dynamite team or a dynamite defense that was able to really succeed, obviously go to the Super Bowl before. I think that this is going to be a guy that, not only is he super young, I think that he's going to be a guy that, has worked under great coaches before. Obviously, Ron Rivera, big fan of him, former Bears defensive coordinator, and also, did a decent job in Carolina. Also, he worked under Andy Reid. So I think this is going to be a guy that, has a lot of promise. And I think that, looking at Sean McDermott, it's going to be as long as he can be, bring that defensive mindset back to Buffalo. I think Buffalo isn't going to be in the shitters, because you look at Buffalo, I mean, obviously they have capable players on offense, but you also look at this defense, there's players with a ton of talent on this team, and as long as you can bring out that talent, I think that Buffalo can be a team that can get back to 8 wins, 9 wins, maybe even 10 wins and sneak into a wild card.
Well, and I mean, this year mixed with last year, because you got to think last year was the draft where they went heavy on defense, and they had the big like draftees of Adolphus Washington from Ohio State, Shaq Lawson. He was coming off of an injury out of that championship game, that championship loss for him against Alabama at Clemson. Then Reggie Ragland, who came over via draft from the Alabama Crimson Tide. This year, they go ahead and continue that kind of defense drafting by taking Tre'Davious White, a guy that we thought was going to come out last year, who ended up staying for LSU, and that's why he was this year's draft. So I look at it, and they've got some guys that are a year older, a year better, not dealing with the injuries maybe that they had to deal with coming out of college a year ago. And more importantly, this offense, this is a very different team than we talked about with the Jets, because they have a quarterback. And to me, their biggest question is wide receiver, because it's, can Sammy Watkins stay healthy?
Well, yeah, can Sammy Watkins stay healthy? But even like wide receiver, I think it's like a decent group of guys you have there. Obviously, they brought in Rod Streeter. I don't know exactly how much he can help coming from Oakland, but he's shown some promises, some games where he's been decent. But the real guy that they brought in from Oakland that I'm really excited for is Andre Holmes. This is a guy that really looked fantastic and had spurts. And if Sammy Watkins goes down, I think that Andre Holmes could be a guy that really surprises people, because you look at Buffalo and they've had the ability to find good wide receivers before. They've been able to find guys like Kevin Hogan. They've been able to find a ton of wide receivers that have been really good, not only on the Bills but then also other places. So I think that the going out and getting Andre Holmes is a really nice choice. And also Zay Jones, their draft pick. I think that this guy, with his athletic ability, with his shiftiness, with his quickness, I think that Zay Jones could be a really nice addition. You add that to the deep threat of Sammy Watkins, this might be a really nice 3-pair that they got going from wide receiver. And then as long as Charles Clay can stay healthy, that's a nice 4 guys that can be wide receivers and receiving threats for this team. And obviously we know the dangerous LaShawn McCoy there. I mean, this was a team last year that did underachieve. I mean, you look at Rex Ryan in his second year, you thought this team was going to be able to take a step up. You look at the previous years they had, I mean, there was some great defenses in this Buffalo, in Buffalo, and really Sean McDermott needs to bring that back, because this offense is capable, but I think the defense needs to be the focal point of this team, because there's a ton of players, like you mentioned, not only that they drafted, but they're still already here on this Buffalo defense that can make an impact. So I wouldn't say Buffalo is in the shitters. Has no hope, because as long as Sean McDermott is able to pull it together, and maybe it was just a culture change that needed to happen, pulling these players together, I think that they can put out a very decent NFL team out on the field.
Well, and the thing that I think of with McDermott compared to Rex Ryan is what we thought with Rex Ryan was defensive-minded head coach. Defense is going to be the strength of this team, and it wasn't. I mean, I look at last year's results just in games. You look at all their wins, 33-18 against the Cardinals, 16-0 against New England. You have 30-19 against LA, the Rams, 45-16 against the Niners, 16-12 Bengals, 28-21 Jacksonville, Cleveland 33-13. What did you notice about most of those teams? And the one that you don't notice this with didn't have Tom Brady.
They're terrible offenses.
They're terrible. Well, they were terrible teams last year.
Yeah.
The Cardinals weren't good. The Rams were awful. The Niners were the second overall pick in the draft. The Cleveland Browns were the number 1 pick in the draft. We talked about Jacksonville a little bit with the Jets, how they underperform each year. And then the Bengals weren't too much better last year. I look at the other games, though, and more importantly, a stretch down the road. Miami, they lose by 3, 28-25. But then your offense puts up 25 points. You let up 41 and 33. I know it's New England with Tom Brady and the Seattle Seahawks in Seattle, but then it's like 38-24 against the Oakland Raiders, 30-10. You let the Jets score 30 points on you. That team that we said finished third from the bottom in points per game, put up 30 points on you. This defense needed a new identity. They needed a new guy at the top to lead them. And hopefully Sean McDermott can be that guy because, I mean, with Rex Ryan coming in, it was the big name. So it's like, boom, Rex is going to turn this around. Sean McDermott doesn't have that big name ability, so I feel like he won't have as much pressure as Rex did.
Well, and this is a team, too, that had a positive point differential. I mean, this was a team that was outscoring their opponents, at least throughout the whole season. So, and there was times where this Buffalo team just didn't look focused on the field, and maybe Sean McDermott will be able to bring focus to this team and bring a sense of urgency back to this team because it just seemed like they lost that with Rex Ryan there. So, I mean, as long as he's able to bring everyone on the same page, get everyone cohesively working together, I think this Bills team can be decent because, again, you see the positive point differential last year. You also see that the talent on this team is better than the actual results last year. So ultimately, I think that Buffalo can be successful. I think that really relies heavily on Sean McDermott, and it doesn't have to be like he has to overhaul schemes, doesn't have to make sure everyone fits the right way because at least the fits seem fairly decent for everyone, for every player on this team. It's just really about getting them working together because it seemed like Rex Ryan and that whole team got away from doing that last year.
Well, and one of the big guys that I'm going to bring up now because you kind of feel like how everybody fits, and me and Mark kind of talked about this in a past onside kick coming into this season, or it might have been at the very end of this season, is Tyrod Taylor went ahead and his contract right now is, so this year he's got $9.7 million. Then it jumps up to $18 million for the next season, so 2018. But then he's got club options. So this Bills team can be like, after this season, next season, they could be like, if he's not good, get rid of him.
Yeah.
If they keep him one more, get rid of him. Keep him one more, then get rid of him until it's over. I want to ask you a similar question that Mark and I answered. Is Tyrod Taylor, do you see this? Could this be the season where we start to see, is he the quarterback of the future for the Bills?
I don't know.
With Sean McDermott as the head coach.
I mean, I don't know if he's the quarterback of the future. I mean, he's 27 years old. I mean, it's tough to say. This guy who he's had 2 full seasons now in the NFL. He hasn't had a crazy ridiculous year, ridiculous career so far. But he also hasn't been bad. I mean, a 62 career completion percentage. It's not like he's underperforming that much. He's got a positive touchdown to interception ratio. He does have the ability to move, but I don't know how much he can actually take this team further. And yes, I mean, there's obviously been the obvious of Sammy Watkins being injured. Not a lot of weapons around him until LaShawn McCoy. But even then, with LaShawn McCoy, they weren't running enough and they weren't really establishing this offense like they could have. So, I mean, ultimately, I think it really depends on how Tyrod Taylor and the weapons around him affected. I don't really think the blame of the past 2 years has been on Tyrod Taylor or anything like that, but I also don't see Tyrod Taylor as a future quarterback. So it's something where I think Tyrod Taylor is a middle-of-the-pack quarterback, and I don't think we're going to see a huge jump from him.
So you're just happy to have him on your team. I think you're better off than some other teams.
Yeah, exactly. I think he could be a guy that can take your team to the playoffs, but I don't think he's going to be a guy that can take your team to the Super Bowl. And that's all I think of with Tyrod Taylor.
And
I
if
think
he wins the Super Bowl, it'll be like when Trent Dilfer did.
No,
it was
not
all
that
because
bad.
of the defense.
No, I think Tyrod Taylor's way better than Trent Dilfer. I'll take Tyrod Taylor over Trent Dilfer. Trent Dilfer was a bum. He didn't even play the next year after winning a Super Bowl. He was a complete bum. That was a ridiculous defense.
Well, I'm just making the point that it's going to be something else.
Trent Dilfer was a complete outlier.
It's going to be something else that catapults, like Tyrod. I almost said Trent Dilfer again. Tyrod can bring you to the playoffs. he's going to need something else to boost that if you want to get to Super Bowl level.
He's not a franchise changing quarterback. He's a good quarterback. He's not a franchise changer, and I don't see that at all in him. I think he's a good quarterback though, and I don't think he's going to be anything that Bills fans should be expecting a Super Bowl with Tyrod Taylor at the helm. But I also don't think they should be expecting a bum out there.
Well, and that's why to me the weakest link in this entire, I'm going to say offense, I'm not going to say team because the defense has its own things to worry about, but my weakest link with this offense is Sammy Watkins. And the reason why I say that, it has nothing to do with, he's a bum, he's this, he's that. I say he's the weakest link because I feel like if he goes down, this team will suffer greatly because what I feel like will happen is the questions start popping in my head. First off, Zay Jones is a rookie. Is he going to be able to boost up into that number 1 spot? If you say no, keep him at number 2. You put Andre Holmes, who you talked about earlier, at number 1. The thing I worry about with Holmes is, and this is why I feel like Watkins and Jones have to be almost as stellar as Crabtree and Cooper were, because with Andre Holmes, it's easier to kind of not be forgotten, but it's easier to get better looks when the defense has to go, well, we got to cover we got to make sure that Cooper and Crabtree are accounted for.
Well, I think that Andre Holmes is a number 2 receiver. I just think that he's never had the chance because of Crabtree and Cooper. I don't think they're bringing him in to be, the third guy behind Zay Jones. I think Zay Jones is going to be more of the slot receiver, where Andre Holmes and Sammy Watkins are the guys on the outside. I think Andre Holmes is a very capable wide receiver, and I think obviously, the biggest question mark is Sammy Watkins' health, at least on this offense. But it's also, can this team come together? Because there's some decent players on this offense, but you look at this offensive line, and outside of Richie Incognito, I mean, none of these guys are jumping off the page as crazy great linemen. I mean, Richie Incognito, since coming over from the Miami Dolphins and his whole fiasco, he's been really good, and that's why he deserved the contract extension he got. But, I mean, you have a rookie on there, Deion Dawkins, John Miller's nothing special, Cordy Glenn's not anything special. So, really, ultimately, I think that as long as Tyrod Taylor can get the protection, LaShawn McCoy can find the holes, and Sammy Watkins can stay healthy, I think that this offense has a lot of potential because, again, like I said, Andre Holmes could be a nice number 2. Zay Jones is a guy that's freakishly athletic, and I think it can be a really nice addition to this team and nice pairing to Sammy Watkins and Andre Holmes. And as long as Charles Clay can stay healthy as well, he's a really decent tight end. So I think this offense isn't anything bad. I think that goes more to the thing where you talked about with the Jets, where the defense needs to carry a bit of the load more than this offense. I think this offense will be able to put up over 21 points per game, but as long as this defense can be one that holds opponents to 20, 19,
Actually,
something like that.
It's like the thing I look at is show up against the big guns. Against the playoff teams and the ones like we saw where I know, like, I'm going to say Seattle and New England, you're going to be like, Ricky, well, they're like stellar playoff teams. They're not like just bottom of the barrel, but like Seattle, New England, Oakland, Pittsburgh, we saw those games. I'll throw the Jets in there. They weren't even a playoff team, 30-10. I'm still kind of stuck on that 30-10 score.
Because that team wasn't playing together. And you can't look too much at last season.
Plus, that was week 17, and Rex, we already knew Rex was fired.
You can't look too much at last season anymore because that was a completely different team, not from personnel-wise, but because of the coaching staff. And it was because it was a different mentality. It was a different locker room. It was a completely different feel for that team. I think you got to completely wipe the page clean. You can't think too much about last season for the Buffalo Bills because you look at the talent they have. Marcel Darius, Shaq Lawson, Jerry Hughes. You have Reggie Ragland. Lorenzo Alexander had a fantastic year last year. Ronald Darby's a decent cornerback. Obviously, we're expecting big things out of Tre'Davious White. You look at Micah Hyde, too. I mean, Micah Hyde was fantastic last year for Green Bay. So I think that this team has a ton of potential defensively, and as long as they can play together as a cohesive unit and Sammy Watkins can stay healthy and Tyrod Taylor can make their nice reads, I think that this team could be something that can be an 8-win team, a 9-team win, and beat some decent teams, but I don't think they're going to be maybe even upset the Patriots once or twice, or maybe not twice. Maybe they can upset the Patriots once, and maybe they can beat a higher ranked team or a better team in that upper echelon just because this defense is that good.
And I was going to bring this up. There are 2 stretches on the schedule that I look at. And the first one is from week 2 to week 8. Week 6, they have the bye in there. So that's a total of, 6 games? Out of those 6, only one is against a team that I think is very winnable, and that is the Cincinnati Bengals. Besides that, Carolina should be improved. Plus, there's going to be.
I think it beat Carolina.
Like they could beat Carolina, but I think Carolina will be improved. Also, there's going to be a little bit of emotion in that one because Sean McDermott coming back home for kind of the revenge game. That's a winnable game, but I'm right now leaning on the side of Carolina because I'm expecting them to do a little bit better. Denver, I'll probably give that to Denver. Atlanta, no way Buffalo beats Atlanta. Tampa Bay should be improved. Oakland's going to be really good this season. And then the last stretch is 12 to the end of the year because you've got KC, New England, Indy if Andrew Luck is healthy at that point, then Miami, New England, New England. Here's the good part of that, though. If you can get this team playing together by the end of the year, you play all of Miami and New England in December.
Yeah.
You play all 4 of those games in December. So if you can get clicking, get on a roll, maybe you can steal 1 or 2 of those games.
I think that this team could probably start off 3-0. And then I think they can go into their bye 4-1, really, if they're clicking right away. Because, again, I think
only loss being at Atlanta.
Yeah, I think you're overrating Carolina. They're not playing Denver in Mile High, which is a benefit to them. New York's a bum. You look at Cincinnati. I mean, they're nothing special as well. I mean, maybe they can put together 8 wins, but again, that's mostly beating up on the Browns. And then they go in their bye week 4-1, and then Tampa Bay and Oakland are tough teams, but then you have New York again and New Orleans, which are both beatable teams, especially Los Angeles. So really, I think the tough stretch for them is going to be 12-17 because that's when guys are going to be tired. That's when guys are going to be banged up. That's when you're going to have 10 games under your belt, 11 games under your belt, and then you have to go to Arrowhead. You have to go to Miami and New England. You close out your season at New England and Miami. I think that's going to be the toughest stretch because I think
mentally,
I think guys are going to be able to buy in right away to Sean McDermott's thing because they saw that Rex didn't work. They have no choice but to accept. I think it's more of, hey, if we lose to New Orleans, if we lose to New York, then maybe they might not buy into it. Maybe then they'll be, have a huge injury. Maybe Sammy Watkins won't even be playing by then. I think that's when the tough stretch is going to come in. Was when week 12 runs around and they have to go to Arrowhead, and then they have to go play New England, and then they have to go play Indianapolis, and then they have to go play Miami, and then close out at New England, at Miami. I think that's going to be difficult for them.
Well, and the thing that's going to be most crucial about their schedule too is that when we get to that week 12, starting week 12 all the way to 17. Where's Buffalo in the playoff race? If they're in the heat of things, that might add a little bit of shot in the arm where it's like, okay, we're in these games. We got to win to make the playoffs. Or if they have a bad start because they haven't been able to click right away, would a bad start kind of be like, well, we're out of the playoff race, and then we just see them kind of just stumble through that 12-17 because it's kind of like, well, what are we playing for? They're not going to fire Sean McDermott after 1 year.
I don't think they're going to be out of it by then. I mean, it's something where I think this team could be, again, 500 going into week 10 or something like that. I don't think this team is going to be, out of the playoff race by that point. I think it's just going to be more that injuries might hurt this team to an extent where week 12 to 17, they might lose all of those games because this team is that banged up, or this team, might not be fully firing, and they have to go play a Kansas City was a playoff team, a New England that's a playoff team, Indianapolis if they have a defense, then that's a tough game.
And if they have Andrew Luck.
Well, yeah, if you have to play Andrew Luck and that team has a defense, then good luck. Because I mean, Andrew Luck is a guy that I think there's some crazy stat. He's like 28-1 or something.
When the defense holds opponents to 19 or less points.
Yeah, he's like undefeated or something like that. I mean, this as long as he has a defense, Andrew Luck's terrifying. Then you have to play Miami, New England, and Miami again, and those are two playoff teams right there. You're playing them 3 straight times, so it's just something where this team might face a Sammy Watkins injury. LaShawn McCoy's never been the most healthiest back in the world, so he might go down. I mean, this team might get banged up. I think that's one thing that they might not reach 8 wins, 9 wins, 10 wins because of injuries. But that's the only reason why I see that team, underperforming. Because I think they can hang with some teams. I think they can beat Miami once. I think they might be able to shock New England once. I think they possibly could give Kansas City hell. I think they can go up and take one from Tampa Bay or Oakland in that stretch. I don't think they're going to be able to beat Atlanta at Atlanta, but I still think that they might be able to give them a shot or something like that. I mean, I still think that this Buffalo team, with the talent they have, with a completely fresh start, I think that Buffalo can be an interesting team.
Yeah, and to me, it's going to be, where are they going to be? If they're 500, is this going to be the year where they sit at 500 and they're third in the division? Or are they a team that, hey, you know what? We're going to try to challenge Miami to be maybe the second best team, depending on how Miami does, because we got to get into them.
We'll talk to them.
And how they're going to do this season. But before we get into them, I want to flip the conversation to the Bills Mafia out there. Let us know what you guys think down below, but don't go flipping cars or setting things on fire. We got to keep the MVP studios nice and clean. But let us know, what do you think about Tyrod Taylor, Sammy Watkins' health, this team in first-year head coach Sean McDermott, what they are going to do? Let us know down below in the comment section.